What's up, yoga family? It's that time again for another brand new episode of The Yogi Show. Let's get right down to it today with our amazing guest, Mr. Bryan Kest, the man who coined the term power yoga. Bryan is one of the funniest, raw, real, and inspiring yoga teachers on the planet. Get ready to laugh and lighten up, my friends. We will see you on the other side. All right, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bryan Kest. What a pleasure. Thank you for being here, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Honor and pleasure.
Absolutely, man. What an amazing thing. I know Yogi Bryan, this is like your hero, man, we're talking to right now.
Yeah. Bryan, you are my hero. I went and took a class a year ago at the sweatshop here in Phoenix, and you were hilarious. Like, it was a great talk. It was a master class. You did the hour and a half talk. Great talk. And then I was dying in your class. I was laughing so hard. I was like in tears. So funny.
Well, good to hear, man. I mean, laughter's healing, right?
It is.
Dude, that's the truth, man. That's why we make these memes on the internet, these funny yoga memes and these jokes. And, we just try to keep it light. And that's the whole premise behind the Yogi Show, is to bring yoga, mindfulness, and gratitude with a touch of humor to the community. And I don't think there's any better guest than Mr. Bryan Kest for that. I don't think so. I think we got the guy.
Good. Well, you need a little humor. I mean, some people have this wrong idea that, yoga, you need to be incredibly serious. And although you do want really intense focus when you're practicing, intense focus doesn't bar levity. And some people, they forget about that.
That's so true. Yeah. One of my mottos, just for my own practice, is it's just fucking yoga. But it's a paradox. It's I take my yoga practice seriously, but I have to tell myself daily, hey, I have to have fun. I have to laugh. It's not a competition. I used to play competitive golf, and my whole childhood, my whole adolescence was all competitive. And then I brought that stuff to yoga. And when I took your class, it was just such an eye-opening experience, because I think you said something like, you can make yoga shit. You can bring all that stuff to yoga and make it shit.
No doubt, man. You can bring your shit to yoga and turn yoga into shit. Matter of fact, that's probably what happens 90% of the time, because, most people aren't looking for their shit. They're too busy trying to do the pose correctly.
Right. Yeah.
Which is basically more of their shit, but they don't realize it.
I know. That's the whole thing behind it, man. And that's for me, as a practitioner and a teacher, it's how do we get people out of that shitty when they walk in, to leave their shit at the door, work through their shit, but using their breath and the poses. It's not about the pose, it's about the intention behind the pose. And I'm sure you preach that too, Bryan, in your.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's almost my exact words. It's really not about the pose. It's about the mind behind the pose, because you know what, the pose is just the pose is always changing. It's because your body's always changing, so it can't really be about how the pose is, because you don't really know how the pose is supposed to be until you quiet your mind and you feel the response you're getting from your body in the pose. And then you discover the pose, right? And that discovery practice happens because, your mind is quiet and observing, right? So if you make it about the pose, then, you might not be honoring what your needs are actually, because your needs might be different than what you think the pose should be.
Exactly. I love the way that you articulated that is so, so on point. I mean, that's it. That's the whole premise of yoga. You know what I mean? That's the whole thing. It's being aware, just waking up, being aware.
Yeah. Well, you're getting 40 years of experience, and,
there we go.
In that, there's been a load of mistakes, so, you learn. I started off, really physical, it was all about the pose, and, I've learned, I broke myself many times, and I realized that the effects are really superficial. How does touching your legs to your head help your relationship with your father?
Right.
Not sure. I don't think.
Relationship with your wife, but I don't know about your father.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And how does loose hamstrings, heal relationships and solve problems? I mean, if you make this about your body, it's so fucking limited.
It's so true.
And it's even detrimental. We can get into that later if you want, but go on, shoot.
I'm ready for shoot. Yeah, we're ready for the comedy hour. Here we go, man. But you said you've been doing it for 40 years. I mean, 40 years of experience. That's a lot of experience. You know what I mean? So I know, I feel like everybody with the last name Kest does yoga. Like, everybody's doing yoga if your last name is Kest. Is it like growing up, is that like the roots of the Kest genes is yoga, or were you the starting point for the yoga of the Kest genes?
My dad was actually the starting point. I mean, we basically we started at the same time, but he was the impetus. He had got into it from he was a surgeon, and he had a bad back, and the medical community wasn't remedying the situation, so he was looking elsewhere. He came across yoga, and when he did it, it had such an amazing effect on him. He wanted his kids to do it, so that's how it started. He basically forced me to do it. He said, "Do yoga or get out of the house." So that was my.
Oh shit!
And it wasn't long afterwards that he made my other brother start to do it. And one of those other brothers, Johnny, who lives in Michigan, also has continued the practice. And now Johnny's son, Jonah, is, he's a big, these kids these days with this Instagram.
Gosh,
he's probably got his name out there more than anybody due to that social media stuff. And now my son, my 14-year-old son's got his own yoga YouTube site, Mateo Kest. So you know what they say,
everybody's doing it.
Fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, so the kids are picking up on it.
Absolutely, man. And what's so interesting? You said your son's name is Mateo Kest. I have a 2-year-old son, and my son's name is Mateo. Oh. I ain't never met anybody else with a son named Mateo either, huh? So I got 2 Bryans on the call, and then you have a son named Mateo, just like me. What are the chances of all this happening?
Dude, that's pretty rare, man. But you picked a great name.
Gosh, did we just become best friends? BFFs right here.
I think.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to remember, like if I saw you, Bryan, I wouldn't. I mean, I'd remember your face, because I don't forget faces. And if you were in that class in Phoenix, which was a great class, that was really fun, great energy in there. I'd probably remember your face.
I probably had the most tattoos in that class.
Oh, were you in the back?
A beard, tattoos. I was more towards maybe middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. If you saw Yogi Bryan, you can't mistake that guy. The beard is unprecedented.
I'm a little scary looking, but I'm really a teddy bear. I'm really a teddy bear.
Okay.
Bryan, how did you name your son Mateo? Was it named after something specifically, or just like a power name? What was your thoughts behind that? Just
I was in a Spanish class like I don't know, like 10 years ago, and there was a guy named Matthew in the class, and the Spanish teacher told him his Spanish name is Mateo. And, I'm not a big fan of Matthew, but when I heard Mateo, I was like, that's got to be the sweetest name I've ever heard. It's like, it's strong, it's smooth.
So smooth.
It's gentle, but firm. That name is like, it's hard to beat that name for me.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm with you. My wife, Summer, and I picked that name, and I don't even know how it came about. Like, she was practicing Spanish. I'm Mexican, and I just said, our other 2 kids have the first letter name with M, and then we're like, okay, we're sticking with M. How about Matthew, but Spanish? And then boom, there it was, Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, man.
I was married to a Mexican at that time too. Even Melissa's half Mexican. So, these are Italian and Mexican names. So I have a 2-year-old right now, and
nice. Congratulations! You're in the fucking fire too. Welcome.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I'm 4 kids now.
Jeez, that's probably a lot of Ujjayi pranayama going on.
The crazy thing, yoga's never been more necessary, and I've never had less time to do yoga.
Oh my God, that is the premise of my whole life right there. You just literally spit my whole life out in this moment.
You gotta make time for it, dude. You gotta make time.
I know. 5 a.m. 5 a.m. is when my wife and I are going. 5 a.m. That's when we practice. That's when we do our stuff.
Respect to you for that.
Yeah. That's it, man. But yeah, it's amazing. It's been a great experience. Like, you know, children and growing up and family. Like I wouldn't trade it for the world. You know, it's taught me so much more about life and living in the moment, because those moments go by so fast. They're You blink and they're gone. As you know, I mean, you have Mateo who's 14, so you know how fast it goes. You know, and Bryan, you got a 10-year-old. When is there's no 10?
Turns 9. I got a little Yogi. He's gonna turn 9 this Saturday. I take him. I basically, bring him everywhere, yoga with me, and I kind of make him do it. I'm like, you can either do some chores or you can come with me and do yoga. So he opts for the yoga instead of the chores, and I hope it helps.
That's a way to, yeah, that's one way to get them to witness it. I mean, it's like if they see it, if they see it, listen, there's an old saying that says your children will never listen to you, but they'll always become you.
Oh yeah, that's on point. That is, yeah, that's
and it's such a great saying because, I mean, if all we want as parents is for our kids to be healthy and happy, and if you really want them to be healthy and happy, then the best way for that is for you to find it yourself, because they're going to copy you.
So true. We're watching.
If they're seeing this stuff, I mean, most likely it's going to affect them, and they're gonna partake themselves. I got a 9-year-old myself, so I get it.
Oh, so yeah, you get it.
You get it.
Does he play? Does he play video games? Does he play Fortnite at all? By the way,
no, they don't play. The other ones were into, it was a couple years back. Back then it was Minecraft.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we know about that.
Everybody's into Fortnite, but I don't let them indulge in that stuff until they're 12 years old. So it's a girl, and she's got like 2 more years to go.
Okay.
Probably virtual reality or something then in a couple of years.
It'll be something. Yeah, it'll be something crazier by then, But I respect that, Bryan, for sure, man.
And it's hard.
100%.
It's difficult, I mean, you in one sense you're feeling like you're holding them back because technology is the future, and you want them to be really adept at it. And at the same time, you realize that technology it's over the top, and us parents, like we can rely on history to some degree when it comes to most things, but when it comes to technology, we have nothing to fall back on. There's no precedent, right? So you guys, me and you, like us, our generation of parents, like we're trying to figure this shit out. Like, what do we allow our kids to do? What's good and what's not good? Because nobody knows.
It's so true.
Nope.
It's so
and
true.
This stuff's screwing, childhood suicide rates are higher than ever. The social media is screwing these kids up. So figuring out boundaries, is, listen, if you guys figure it out, just let me know, because it's like, what do we do with this stuff, man?
Right. And I've watched like pretty much all your YouTube interviews, and just, I just like your whole mentality. I mean, you've been doing it for 40 years. So you've gone through it. You've gone through the struggles. And one thing I heard that you say quite a bit is just like balance and moderation, and I think you said something about social media on a YouTube interview that I watched. It's like technology is good, but at the same time, like it needs moderation, it needs balance, just like everything else.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I mean, it's, I'm trying to figure out some social media guidelines and rules just for my own family, like just how much they can watch and how much they can partake in. But again, keeping them away from it, I don't know how good that is. They're just going to do it anyways when you're not looking, and it is the future. But at the same time, too much can be harmful. Hey, dude, it's the same thing with food, right? It's the same with anything.
Yeah, and I've noticed with your page on your Instagram, you've been posting more, and you have Power Yoga. It's online. You're doing online classes. If you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, again, it's the future, and
that's right, changing of times. Yeah.
When I first, the internet, I can't remember when it was. It must have been like 2001, 2002. I'm not quite sure when the internet became the internet, but I remember way back then, my thought is that, people are going to be doing this at home. They're going to be doing this on, they're going to put a yoga mat in front of their television. It's going to be on the screen. and they're going to be doing classes, and it's going to be amazing because, and it's even more amazing than I ever could have thought of because, number one, I don't know where you guys live, but I mean, one of you, Bryan, you must live in Arizona, but dude, the traffic, getting to a yoga class, and then doing the class and getting home, for some people, that could be like almost a 4-hour adventure.
Jeez, right? Yep, exactly.
And so it's so convenient to do it at home. And then, you got 10-minute classes and 20-minute classes and 30-minute classes and 45-minute classes. As a parent, like to be able to pop on, to be able to pop on to your favorite teacher at any time you want for the length of time that you want, and really get a valid yoga class. And you get every benefit of being in the class other than possibly the group energy.
Right.
It's become even more amazing than I thought. And I'm happy that I jumped on it, and I'm happy that people are liking it. The feedback's been amazing. Those of you guys listening out there, poweryoga.com.
Yeah, check it out. And the great thing with the internet also is it's 24/7. If you're working a night shift, or no matter what time you're working, where you're going, you can just pop on. I heard you say something that's like, as long as you just do some sort of yoga, or 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you don't have to do an hour class, get into the hang of it, maybe do 20, 30 minutes, jump online. poweryoga.com. Check it out.
Listen, I was like, like I said, I've learned a lot in 40 years, and I was originally probably pretty dogmatic, when it came to anything I believed in, pretty rigid about it. And, I was originally like, a little bit, kind of negative towards the shorter classes. Because I was so dogmatic and thinking, it had to be a certain way. But what I realized is, and I've done it myself, is, dude, if you can slip into your yoga practice, you can close that door and you can start breathing and moving for 20 minutes. It's so much better than nothing.
Right.
So much.
Yeah.
Might not be like, you might not be able to touch everything. It might not be quite as deep as a longer class, but first of all, it'll help you maintain everything that you've already achieved, right? So it's like it's like you're maintaining, all your past effort, and it gives you something that you wouldn't have if you didn't do that 20 minutes. It puts you in a better place. No.
So true. And it's like, say if you only have time for 10 minutes, maybe you sit down, maybe you throw it online, and you're getting into it for that 10 minutes. You're feeling good. You might do 20 minutes, you might do an hour, but it's just like showing up, getting there is the toughest part. And especially with traffic, it's at home. You can turn on the TV, turn on the internet there. Maybe say, I'm going to do 10 minutes for a few days, for a week or two, and then you develop a practice that way, and then you're doing it for an hour.
Well, yeah, show up. That's another huge valid point. I wasn't even talking about that. I was just talking about, like, if you only have 20 minutes, then
for that day,
this will work for you. Don't think that 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes isn't enough. But Bryan, what you just said was also really, really, really important, because a lot of people are intimidated by an hour and a half class. And if you say,
me.
If you say to yourself, fuck the hour and a half class, I'm just going to do 10 minutes. What Bryan just said is true. Once you break through that initial resistance, after 10 minutes, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be like, I can go longer.
Yes.
It's so true. It's so true. We Pedro and I have this thing that we're like, we heard it on like a Tim Ferriss podcast. It was about procrastination. It was like, just commit to 2 shitty pages of writing a day, and those 2 shitty pages will turn into 10, maybe 30. Maybe you'll have like, awesome writing, or maybe you'll just write 2 shitty pages. So we always say that, and comes to yoga too. It's like, dude, maybe it's just 2 shitty minutes of yoga, but that turns into 10 minutes.
Exactly. Because once you get your mat, and you start to move a little bit, a lot of 9 times out of 10, it'll turn into way more than than you thought. And then when you take, we were talking about it earlier, you take you mentioned the word moderation, and you could call it that. You could also use the word gentleness. Either way, it's basically, you could use both of those words there. But you take that approach, where, because when you come to yoga with this old fitness mentality, which is basically no pain, no gain,
Jane Fonda.
it's a really intimidating thing, but when you go in there and you're gentle, man, this shit actually feels good. Then, it's easier to stay longer than 10 minutes because you're not putting all this pressure on yourself of, how far in the pose you got to go, how the pose should look. You're just you're being gentle, man. And it feels good.
Yeah, it just feels damn good, man. And that's the whole point, is to just like finding what feels good for you in your practice. And that's advice I give to all like students, or, the listeners out there that are like aspiring yoga students that are looking to get into more of like, more challenging practice, let's call it. Let's say they're going to a basic hatha class. They're like, oh, that vinyasa looks on the schedule, but that looks hard. Or, maybe they go to vinyasa and then there's like a, vinyasa 2 and they're like, oh man, intimidated, Just show up as yourself, like show up in your practice for wherever you're at, and allow the yoga to meet you where you are. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Let it be like, let the yoga meet you where you are in your practice, and then maybe try to step outside your comfort zone and extend the time, or extend the style of practice that you're doing, and push the limits of your comfort zone. That's where those little breakthroughs happen. You know what I mean? That's where it happens. And I'm sure you've seen that in all the power yoga you've done around the world. You push these people to their limit.
Oh, that's the going mentality of people just getting pushed to their limit. It's the fit. I don't know. Did you guys? I mean, I have this one blog called Western Fitness Absurdity.
I haven't read it. Tell us about it.
It's just basically that. I mean, it's just listen. Like you could. It's so challenging even to see how the fitness mentality is going. Anybody paying attention to their life, right? Which is basically, you could say, the goal of yoga, awareness. Like, just pay attention to your damn life. But when you're so indoctrinated with a message, you end up seeing the message instead of actually seeing what's in front of your eyes. And the message is no pain, no gain, right? But the truth is no pain, no injury. And the bottom line is anything you've seen in your entire life has taught you, the harder you are on anything, the faster you destroy it. There's nothing on earth that's outside of that law. So if you want to last as long as possible and you want to feel as good as possible, the last thing on earth you'd ever want to do is push your body hard. It's just nuts, right? I mean, because what you're doing is you're destroying it. But if there's no way, if you're gentle in your yoga practice, there's no way you're going to get yourself in that Lululemon outfit 2 sizes too small. Like, if you'd have to be more dominated by your wisdom than your vanity. And that's not easy in a society that doesn't support that. You're constantly being given these messages since the time you could open your eyes of, how a man should look, how a woman should look, right? And then people, they spend the rest of their life playing out that program, and they're not even aware of it. And they're making themselves sick trying to look pretty, right? And that's what they meant by bringing their shit into yoga and turning yoga into shit. You
slapping a filter on it.
Into yoga. Everybody brings their shit into yoga, but the question is, are you disempowering it or are you empowering it? And most people are empowering it because they're not looking for their shit. They're too busy trying to do triangle pose correctly. And they're not even able to do it correctly. I mean, it's all a bunch of fucking mess.
Yeah.
No, that's so true. So when I came to your class last September, my yoga was shit and I didn't even know it. And when I got to your master class, I'm like, okay, it's power yoga. It's a 3-hour class. Like, I'm going to be doing yoga for 3 hours. I mean, I didn't read too much into it. I heard your name and I heard power yoga, and you even talked about the power yoga name. But so with your talk for that hour, I'm like, holy shit, my yoga is shit. Like, I'm doing it for my body. And you mentioned like you mentioned Vipassana, you mentioned meditation, and you mentioned like walking is a gentle exercise, and that's a really good exercise compared. Like yoga is a great exercise. It gets your whole nook and crannies of your body. You were saying walking's good too, but yoga, it's the intention behind the practice. It was so powerful for me. I started a meditation practice shortly after,
Beautiful.
and I've continued that.
Hey, you guys, if you Google healthiest exercise on earth, number one comes up as walking, and number two, swimming. The truth is, if you really want to, it's hard for people to hear, we're so physically orientated, but the truth is the body doesn't really need that much, and now they're telling us 90 to 95% of all physical disease from mental stress. Like, if you're really honest about health, don't even worry about your body. Start looking at your mind state, and that's why every great person that walked on the planet, from Jesus to Buddha to Mother Teresa to Gandhi to Martin Luther King, none of them ever said, "Stick your legs behind your head."
No, not a one.
But every single one of them said, "Try to develop the benevolent qualities of your mind." Right? Yes. Jesus talked about non-judgment, and Buddha moderation, and Martin Luther King equality, and Mother Teresa compassion. These people are the greatest people because they cared about us more than anybody's ever cared about us. And this is what they said, and then we put them on a pedestal, right? But it's like we discard their message in our life. And if, any of your listeners out there think the goal of yoga is any different than what these great people had taught, then you got another thought coming.
So true. I don't think I've seen like Buddha, Jesus, Mother Teresa do a Pinchamara asana.
Hey, no, there's.
It never happened.
No, you didn't see a picture of her in a yoga pose. Jesus didn't have all four nails over his head, did he?
No. Yeah, right. He wasn't inverted doing that.
No, and the legs weren't behind his head, right? It was like. And then check this out, guys. I lived in India for a year, and when I was there before the internet in the 80s, you could go up and down India, right? From the tip to the top and back, and you can barely find a physical yoga class. Like 99.9% of all yoga in India has nothing to do with physicality. It has to do with meditation and devotional practices. In other words, practices that address your mind state. Maybe they know what modern medicine's just discovering. Like, if you really want wellness, like, look at your mind, man.
Yeah, it's inside there for sure. Bryan, do you do Vipassanas frequently? Is that a practice of yours frequently?
Yeah, I do the practice almost daily. I've went up to do, these are 10 and 20 and 30-day sits where you're in silence. And, I've done 20 of those.
Holy wow. Like 30, you've done 30. How many 30 days have you done?
None. I've done 120 and all the rest I've done 10 days.
10 is, I can't even, that's goals. Like, wow.
I would love to do a 30, but again, you guys know with children, it's different.
Totally.
How is the physical pain of a Vipassana? How is, I really want to do one, but I've been practicing meditation. I've been getting up to an hour in the mornings, but how is the physical pain of going through that 10 days, like sitting there?
It's the hardest thing I ever done in my life.
Wow.
Oh gosh. Wow.
But, and I'm talking, I almost died in India of hepatitis, and there's no doubt that Vipassana was more difficult.
Shit.
So rewarding, right?
But 10 days later, it spit you out. You survived, and it took me about 3 of them to get through the physical pain, but you do get through it. It is a process. I think you're every ounce of your being is rejecting this, and part of that rejection process is physical pain. It's like what a heroin addict has to go through when they go to the treatment center.
The detox.
You got to go through the withdrawal symptoms, and that's basically what you go through when you get to Vipassana. That physical pain is basically detox, man.
Just shedding off all that tension, and where you're holding the tension in the body too, I've heard.
Oh yeah, man. And it's basically when you're addicted to something, your being, your body, your mind, it wants that thing. And so when you're in Vipassana, you're no longer feeding your addiction, right? You're basically dealing with the greatest addiction of your life, which is the place where your mind dwells. Right? The greatest addiction of your life is the place where your mind dwells. Like, I've heard studies that up to 80% of the thoughts you have are the same thoughts you have every single day.
Yeah, I heard the same thing. Yep.
You know, greatest addiction of your life is the place where your mind dwells. So can you imagine the ferocity of the withdrawal symptoms that you're going to have to go through dealing with this addiction?
No.
I mean, this is not easy shit, but if the goal is wellness, you know, what's your choice?
Right.
That's so true. And I remember you saying that when you found Vipassana, when you did that Vipassana, like that's where you felt the true yoga.
No
right?
doubt, no doubt, because before that it was physical, you know. And then what you do when you do the Vipassana is you learn things. It's not things that I could tell you right now. It's not things you could ever teach outside of that situation, because you know there's no situation on earth. None of you guys can think of a situation on earth that creates the environment that Vipassana creates. Right? Number one, you're not allowed to talk for 10 days. Number two, you're not allowed to read or write or listen to music or even make eye contact with anybody. So the level of silence that you achieve is, you know, it's there's no words for that. It's never happened before, right? And then you're meditating for 12 hours a day, which again has never happened before. And and then you go in there and they house you and they teach you and they feed you, and it's all on donation basis. They don't charge you a penny for it. I mean, this is the most freakish environment on planet Earth, right? And so, you know, what you achieve in that environment, they won't even teach you the Vipassana until the fifth day or the fourth day, right? So, because you need that 4 days to create some space between wherever you were before you came to Vipassana and this point 4 days into it where they're going to actually teach you Vipassana, right? And what you do there, you know, is not something you could ever teach outside of that scenario, because you need that scenario to achieve what they're going to be getting you to achieve. It's really, really mind blowing. But what I learned there was what yoga really is and the stuff that I needed to bring into my physical practice to make my physical practice yoga. Otherwise, it wasn't yoga. It was just calisthenics from India.
Yeah, just movements. Just movements that you learn without the intention behind it. Did the Vipassana spawn you? Like, how long were you teaching yoga before you went to Vipassana? Or was it vice versa?
No. My first Vipassana, I was 24, and I started teaching at 20. So I've been teaching for 4 years already and been practicing for 9 years.
Okay. So that's the little timeline there. And did you already have a yoga studio? Were you already a studio owner when you did your first Vipassana? Or was that like kind of like projected you into like, I need to bring this to more people?
No, I was probably teaching at a gym. At that time, they didn't even have yoga studios.
Wow. Okay.
There was no yoga studio. I was probably teaching at a gym.
Nah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then, so from the gym, you do the Vipassana. And then, so you mentioned that the Vipassana was donation based. And I know that Santa Monica Power Yoga was donation based. What was the thinking behind like transitioning to like you getting into the yoga studio space? Were all like, how many yoga studios have you owned?
All together, 1, 2, 3, 3.
Three. And were they all donation based or just
Yeah.
Santa Monica? They were.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So can you give us the mentality? Because I do donation based things in my community, and I'm just curious to hear from like, I think the guy that started donation based, like what was the mindset thinking when you started that? And like, can you give us a little bit of insight on that?
Well, I came out of Vipassana, and you know, they run their whole deal on donation, and I just wanted to cry, man. I just wanted to cry. I'm like, it's giving instead of taking. It's like they really want me to be well, it's like they're not saying, listen, in order for you to do this, you have to give me this, you know, like they're like, no, we want you to be well. Here, take this. And if you'd like to give to the next person because you're already done, then when the Vipassana is over with, you're free to donate. And I was like, I just wanted to cry, and I was like, I was crying actually at that point, and I was like, why can't it be like this in the world? Why can't we care more about people than their money? Why can't we give instead of take? What's stopping this from happening in other businesses, right? And especially a yoga studio, which, is, really, there's never been in all the history of yoga, up to, modern times, there was never a charge for it. I mean, Jesus didn't charge for his teachings, and Buddha didn't charge for her teachings. Mother Teresa didn't charge. And, when you charge money, then you're alienating the people who can't afford it.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Could you imagine them like doing workshops like Jesus and Mother Teresa? They're like, 200-hour workshop by Mother Teresa. Kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really, I was just thinking, man, why can't we do this in the world? And I couldn't think of a reason why we couldn't do it in the world. So I basically made a mental note that, when I open my own studio, I'm going to do it. And that's exactly what I did.
That's amazing. That's so cool that you took the initiative to do that. And then like all obviously abundance and everything comes from not like, hey, you're required to pay me X. Like, I just want people to feel good. And I know that by, this is me speaking, I guess for you, but like living your life of service, that everything's going to come back full circle and support you, family, and all that stuff. Like, that's my mentality. I'm assuming the same for you, something like that.
Yeah, it even says it in the Bible, doesn't it? Like, if you give, it'll come back 100 times or something like that.
Yeah.
The question is, who's got the balls to try?
Right. Who's gonna do it? Like, who's gonna own it and just say like, do it?
Your language, who's got the cojones?
Yeah. Who's got him, man? Who has got him? And where did you like? Okay, so there was no.
We'll link cojones in the show notes, so you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen. You know,
Bryan, but there was no teacher trainings like back in the day, like right there. There was no 200-hour teacher training. So like, where did you learn yoga or to teach yoga? Like, who was your teacher?
Well, I don't call it teaching yoga. I call it sharing yoga, and everybody has the right to share anything they want to share, especially the things that make them feel good, the things that benefit them. So listen, if your grandma's got this amazing tamale recipe.
I love me tamales.
Oh my gosh, yes.
If she's got an amazing tamale recipe and she passed this recipe to you, and one of your friends is over and was like, I'm looking for a tamale recipe, and you say, hey, I got one. I got one from my grandma. I mean, you don't have to go through a tamale teacher's training, do you?
I don't think so. I'm not sure that they have those.
That should be something, though, maybe.
Share your grandma's recipe if you want, and then the person you share it with is also free to add a little bit more hot sauce or take away a little hot sauce, and so they can kind of fuck with your recipe to fit them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all that's going on, and that's what I did, man. I was just like, hey, I lift my arms up and I inhale and I exhale, I bend over and it makes me feel good. Here, you try.
Yep. And then that's how it starts.
And that's it. The teacher's trainings, obviously it's, it doesn't hurt to have a concentrated, period of time spent on developing the skills and focusing on the aspects of sharing yoga that, might be helpful to focus on. But, ultimately, over the years of teaching, you're going to gain that experience as well. So, teachers' trainings, I understand them. Partially they're there for people to make money and there can be some benefit, but it's not a necessary thing.
That's so true in I get this question a lot. And I'm a newer yoga teacher. I mean, I've been teaching a little over 2 years. So like when I get these questions asked, I always have to just, ask someone else sometimes, or tell them like, hey, maybe you need to ask someone, that has been around a little bit longer. But I heard you say in an interview about like, if you're a new teacher, just teach, right? It's like, just teach.
Why not? We listen. This whole, there's a whole mentality about, now we got the Yoga Alliance and all the, this is what Americans do to things. I mean, we basically, we create all this red tape and all this bureaucracy and all these rules and this shit's been passed down from teacher to student to teacher for the past 4, 5, 6,000 years. There's never been a Yoga Alliance. We don't need it now.
Right.
Yeah,
it's like the yoga police.
Just let me ask you, how do you systematize the dissemination of love?
Gosh,
I wouldn't even know. Like, you can't.
That's deep. It's deep,
Like,
man.
shouldn't a teacher be able to look at the person in front of them and figure out, like, what's the best way for this person to receive the information, and then give it to them in that way, rather than having to, it's like a yoga pose, rather than having to do it one way or the right way, So,
Right.
teachers' trainings are great for information, but the student has to remember that what they learn in there are not rules; they're just suggestions.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really a personal practice. I mean, the best teachers that I've taken classes from have like their own solid personal practice. They're practicing, daily, or at least 4 or 5 times a week. Like, they're really practicing, compared to just, reading something or learning some yoga anatomy. And that's great to learn yoga anatomy and learn all that stuff. But like, are you physically practicing? Are you working on things?
Yeah, that's the most important, because that's where you do all the real learning. Because, if you think about it, the goal of yoga is, to be enlightenment, and enlightenment means, to shine a light on something. And the reason for that is because you can't see when it's dark. You can only see when it's light, right? And in order to see, you have to pay attention to what you're doing, right? You have to quiet down your mind, right? Because you can't pay attention to what you're doing if you're thinking about other things. So your mind gets really quiet. And when your mind gets really quiet, you can't believe that the stuff that starts to come, it's almost like you're a human receiver. And like, you start to understand things, and all this stuff that you understand, which you'll eventually share as a teacher, all that stuff you understand, is coming through your yoga practice yourself. So, what you're saying is true. I mean, you got to have a solid practice to have something of any legitimacy to offer.
Yeah, you can't pour. I always say that you can't pour from the empty cup. You can't pour from the empty cup. So if you're not filling your cup with your own practice, whether it be, meditation or asana with, yoga poses, whatever it is, if there's not some mindfulness based practice, how can you teach that to somebody? Like, and I went through this struggle a couple years ago when I was in a transitional stage in my life where I wasn't practicing as yoga as much. I felt super disconnected, but I was still teaching yoga asana, and I just didn't. I was just so disconnected, man. And I think my students could feel it because I wasn't like holding the space like I know that I could,
I agree, man. I think your students could 100% feel it, and I have a feeling if you would have continued down that path, you wouldn't have many students.
Correct, no doubt.
Yeah, because they can feel that vibe.
Hey, man, one of Albert Einstein's most famous quotes was, "All wisdom comes from experience. Everything else is just information." Right? Like, if you're not literally, in it, doing it, you really have nothing to offer.
Nothing.
You're just a parrot. You're a parrot repeating shit you heard, but you don't even know if it's true.
Nah, you just read it on Instagram somewhere in a caption. What do you mean? It's true. It's got to be.
Yeah. One of the best quotes I heard on a YouTube that you did, like an interview. It said that practice yoga and like the universe will take care of you. And I've been like saying that quote, and even on I think it was like the first or second episode of this. I quoted you, and then I couldn't find that on YouTube. And I'm like, holy shit, did he really say that? And I actually found it today. And you said your teacher told you that, right?
Yeah, you got a good memory. My first teacher just, when I was 15 years old, and of course back then it just went in one ear and out the other, but, looking back, he was so right. I never went, I'm a high, I never went to school past 15 years old. I'm basically a junior high school dropout. So, I'm a prime example of this, and my teacher said to me, he said, Bryan, just do your yoga and everything else will be taken care of. And he was so right. Here I am, 55, 4 kids, living in a wonderful house in a wonderful neighborhood. And it's all worked out, I've had my yoga practice. I feel that's been the catalyst.
That's so the point that about like evolution of like your life from being junior, dropping out of school, or essentially, but being able to maintain a practice for this long, and that everything along the way is just taking care of itself is astounding, amazing, and that's the yoga working. Like that's how the yoga is really working. That's it right there.
Yeah, that is it. But it's not. I don't like to emphasize that because it's kind of esoteric, right? Like just do yoga. First of all, you're basically saying, hey, believe me. And I don't want anybody in the world to ever believe me, right? Because I don't want that responsibility. I want people to understand how things are going to work. And I want them to understand it themselves. I want it to make sense to them. Then they're motivated to work on it. If I just said, hey, do yoga and everything else in your life will be taken care of, they're like, yeah, how does that work? And you really can't explain that to them. So I don't even focus on that, but it really has been my truth. What I try to focus is on just the shit that makes sense. And to me, all this stuff makes sense.
It's so true. I mean, I can totally relate to, practicing yoga and the universe takes care of the rest. Like I started my Instagram back in 2016 just to make fun of yoga. Like I didn't have a yoga practice. I just saw one of my friends doing a yoga challenge and she was doing yoga like on her bed, on her kitchen table. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. People really do this. So I'm like, I'm going to start an Instagram just to make fun of yoga. I didn't have a yoga practice. I was out of shape. And as I made fun of yoga, like I started doing yoga challenges and working with teachers. Didn't know anything about it. And then I went to a yoga studio because I'm like, I have Instagram. Like I should probably learn about yoga to make fun of it more. And then yoga took my ass. Like it changed my life 180 degrees since I started practicing yoga. I mean, just the whole mental space of my life and just how I think and law of attraction stuff. I mean, I can go into, that's way down the rabbit hole, but like I 100% agree with you. Like if you just practice yoga, like you're going to have a change in your mental state and that's going to change your life somehow. Like you're going to change.
No doubt. Even explain to people, like, you can explain to people, like, how it works. And then they can say, oh, yeah, I want to give it a try. You can't really explain Kundalini, I mean,
No.
Do you believe that if you walk into a marketplace and you blow yourself up, 7 virgins are waiting for you in heaven?
Right.
I mean,
no.
if you don't believe that, then why would you believe in chakras?
Right? Yeah. I'd be like, get the fuck out of here. I'm not. Yeah.
Why would you believe in Kundalini? I mean, it's like, why would you believe in something you've never seen? And, why would we criticize these other people for their beliefs if in our own way, we're doing the same damn thing? This doesn't even, it doesn't have to be anything esoteric. It's really simple. I mean, you can't take care of a place that you don't touch. So you have all these creative movements that are focused on touching all these places. The harder you are in anything, the faster you destroy it. So you got to make sure you touch these places gentle, right? In order to be gentle, you have to tune into your experience because gentleness will always be changing according to the situation. Are you old? Are you injured? Are you pregnant? What's going on right now? So in order to be gentle, you have to tune in. Whenever you tune into something, your mind becomes quiet, right? When your mind becomes quiet, is the only state in the world that you can truly relax. Relaxing is the opposite of stressing. Stressing is doing the body the most damage. So right there, you got the healthiest. I mean, it just, that's the rabbit hole, but it's a rabbit hole that makes sense.
It does. It does. And it really comes down to like, the more I practice yoga, the more I have love and acceptance of myself, the more self-study, like for me, and the better I can deal with. Because when times get tough, like I still fucking get mad, and like it's still like road rage happens, but those are getting better as I practice yoga. Like those times are getting better. So it's like, it really is just progress.
I agree with you, but that now you have to be able to say to you, like someone you're saying that to, because born again Christian will say the same thing. They'll say, Jesus saved me from my rage and this and that and the other thing,
Oh, true.
So the thing is now everything you said is true for you, and it's actually been true for me too. Now you got to be able to say why, right? You got to be able to say, and the reason is, right, because people are I think are tired of hearing these. Because everybody's got their own practice, every chiropractor will tell you they can heal you. Every acupuncturist, everybody's got this thing that works for them. And people are basically, they've tried a million things and they're kind of sick of it. They want to know, okay, this works for you. Why does this make road rage less intense for you? Why does this work for you? Because if you can explain to them why it works and they understand it, they're like, oh shit, that makes sense. I want to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's so true. And it's like so simple too. It's like my breath, and I learned that in yoga, and I can learn that walking, and I can come to your class and like take those jewels that you taught in terms of, I can make my yoga shit. Like, it's just that constant coming back to the breath. For me.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I'm on board, dude. You sold me. Where do I sign up?
We're having a teacher.
Well, I have a 200-hour training if you want to know. Just kidding.
You know what? I think that, you might see me in there because, just between me and you and I guess the whole world now, because
and the million people listening to this.
Exactly. I've never done a teacher's training. Never done a 200-hour, so
no, but now you're gonna do ours. But now
because I'll tell you something, man. I don't know what I'd do without that Yoga Alliance accreditation.
You're too funny, Bryan, man. I appreciate your humor. Your humor. Before I even started, we started making funny content on the internet on my account or on Bryan's account. Like, you would come to some. I live in Boca Raton, Florida, so you used to come here for Thanksgiving class. You know what I'm talking about, at Yoga South at James Keeger's place.
Yeah, I'm there every year.
But except this year, you're not there because I was gonna come and you're not on the schedule. Unless you're coming and it's not on the schedule yet or something that I don't know about.
I'm not going to be. I'm actually going to be in Florida in the first half of November, but then I'm actually going to for the first time in 15 years be home for Thanksgiving instead of Florida.
Instead of Boca Raton, where I live, and I was going to come hang out, but that's okay. It's all right. I missed my boat the last 4 years when I lived down here before you were here, but it's like doing that and like being in this space and doing the trainings. It's like, do we, where do we go from there? Like, do we need to do a training? Like, do people need to do a training? Like, if you're a new yoga teacher, like you can just share the yoga. What advice could you give if someone was out there like, I want to teach yoga? What do I do? If they asked you that question, Bryan, what would you say to them?
I would say, do you practice yoga? And they probably would say yes. And then I would say, do you benefit from your practice? And they probably would say yes. And then I would say, well, then why don't you just share with people the things that you do that bring you benefit? And most likely it'll bring them benefit as well. That's it. And then the more you share, the better you get at sharing, right? Because there's a learning curve, just like in anything. Even if you do a teacher's training, you're not going to necessarily be the teacher that you will be in 10 years when you walk out of that teacher's training. There's a learning curve. So, regardless of whether you do a teacher's training or not, there's going to be a learning curve, but you got to start somewhere. And there's no reason you can't start even without a teacher's training, because even though it's probably going to be changing, because this is what us Americans do, right now there is no laws pertaining to whether you can teach yoga with or without a teacher's training. Like anybody can teach yoga right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, as long as you can talk.
Right
I mean, you don't have to talk.
Yoga
As long as you
Science
can.
has really sunk their claws into this, and people, because it fits the program that we all been indoctrinated in growing up in this culture, that people should have a certificate or a degree and all this shit. So, I think, there's a lot of gyms out there. There's a lot of studios that might not let you teach unless you have your 200-hour or something like that. But the truth is that there's no laws pertaining to that. And, this 200-hour thing, this yoga, I mean, first of all, no one even knows who these people are and whoever gave them the right to create this curriculum for people. I mean, who are these people?
I don't know.
Who gave them the right to create a Yoga Alliance curriculum, and then how does that really benefit people? I mean, I know maybe their intentions were benevolent. Maybe they thought, we want to keep all the quacks out of yoga by making sure that yoga teachers at least have a certain level of education behind them before they start sharing this stuff. So you can kind of understand maybe what their mentality was. But, my mentality is that since when does having a certificate keep the quacks out?
It doesn't.
I think the certificate actually empowers the quack because now you believe this person because they have a certain. I mean, look at the Catholic priests. They all go through seminary school. They all have a certificate, and look what the fuck they've done to all the little boys. I mean, because we trusted them because they had a certificate. I mean, anybody can have a certificate if they have a good memory, because all you need is a good memory to get a certificate. Because that's all testing is it's repeating back information that was given to you. Right? So anybody on earth can get a certificate. So certificates don't really keep the quacks out. What certificates do is they empower the quacks, because now you're trusting people who maybe you shouldn't trust because they have a certificate. So I don't believe it works. I really believe that anybody should have the right to share this stuff and, let the student who's getting the information decide whether they like it or not.
And I think more people would be teaching too. Other people maybe teaching their mom, teaching their grandma.
And that's where you should start. You start teaching family and friends, or anybody who's asking you, and take it from there. That's how I started. Someone just said, "Hey, what are you doing? Will you share this?" And I was like, "Well, this is what I do, and I'll be happy to share it." Because again, there was no teachers trainings back then.
Who is your teachers?
Well, I started, like I told you guys, with David Williams, who was the first person to bring Ashtanga yoga to the entire world outside of India. I was fortunate enough to be in his class. And then I actually moved to India for a year, and I studied with his teacher, which is basically the guy that created Ashtanga yoga. His name was Patabi Joyce.
Yeah.
And then I went to Vipassana meditation, which is a guy named S.N. Goenka, and started studying that. So, and of course, the main teacher is my own yoga practice.
Yeah, because it evolves, right?
That's the main.
When your yoga practice.
Yeah, it totally evolves, and you start to watch what's going on, and you learn from it, and you share it with your students. I mean, you beat yourself up every day, and eventually you realize, no, that doesn't work, and all of a sudden you're teaching gentleness. And then the people who are receiving that message notice every relationship in their entire life is improving, because all relationships benefit when you become more gentle. So, but
yes.
But it didn't happen until I beat the shit out of myself, right? So
that's right. I tell my students this all the time, or I've said this story a few times where, if you experience something in yoga or whatever it is, and you're able to be a little bit kinder, and then you go to Starbucks or wherever it is you get your coffee, right? And you smile at the barista, right? And the barista's having a shit day, and the barista smiles, and he's like, "Oh man, like that guy made me feel good." And then the barista passes that on to the next customer that got something, and that customer shows a smile to their boss, and then the trickle effect all the way down. That one smile that you had because you're feeling good and gentle has traveled halfway around the world to someone else that you would never even know about because of that first smile that you had. It's contagious.
Oh, I'm gonna call you Gandhi Jr. Wasn't that Gandhi's famous quote? Be the change that you want to be, because it can't change the world if it doesn't change in me.
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. I guess I got a new name, guys.
I'm looking at the time. I know you guys got to wrap up soon, so let's end it right with who's the most famous yoga teacher in the entire world right now?
Bryan Kest?
No, I wish, but no.
There, we're ending it right there. The Bryan Kest, most famous.
Yeah, she would just cut the recording, just cut the tape. No, we got a little bit. We got a little more time. Brian, you still got like 10 more minutes. You got 10 more minutes.
Yes.
Bryan Kest, you got 10, Brian?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Most famous yoga teacher in the world. I don't know. Give me the answer, Bryan Kest.
Donald Trump.
I had a feeling that's what you were gonna go with, but I was like, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because listen, man, I mean, Donald Trump is basically, and especially with the yoga community, right? First of all, Donald Trump is showing all of us how fucking judgmental we are, right? I mean, listen to this, dude. Can you imagine how a nanny can love a baby the same as a mother loves a baby? I mean, would you not have compassion for little baby Donald Trump, who was raised by fucking nannies instead of a mother and received absolutely no love in his life? You would have tears coming down your eyes of compassion if you ever saw a little child not being loved. Right? Can you imagine that from your own kids, right? So there's Donald Trump. There's a little baby that's never been loved. And this is what he ends up being, right? He ends up being who he is right now, right? But where's all the compassion now? And we're the yogis, right? We're the yogis. And the yoga community is the most judgmental and critical of all the communities, right? I mean, the nails were going into his hands and he said, do not judge them. And we walk around judging everything every fucking day, right? And all Donald Trump is a reflection of ourselves, right? Because everything, listen, this is science, right? Like attracts like. You draw to you that of which you are. You can't see anything on earth that's not coming from you. So if you want Donald Trump to go away, then you got to eradicate the qualities within you that are creating Donald Trump. Right? And when Donald Trump comes on and does his crazy stuff, you have an opportunity to stop feeding the sick mind of judgment and criticism, because you're not hurting him, you're hurting yourself.
You're hurting you. You're hurting yourself,
what
man.
What you're doing is you're strengthening those sick qualities. Every time you have a judgmental thought, you strengthen judgment. Every time you have a critical thought, you strengthen criticism. Right? Because this is universal law. If you give it food, it becomes strong. And if you stop giving it food, it starves and dies. So the biggest question in yoga is, what the fuck are you feeding?
Right.
What do you feed 24/7 and you don't even know you're feeding it, because they taught you math, history, and science, but they never taught you the greatest factor in your entire life is the place where your mind dwells. So next time that guy gets on TV or on Twitter or whatever he does and he says what he says, I mean, notice your tendencies. Why don't you send him love instead of fucking criticism? Because if you go up to Donald Trump's face and you judge him, he's going to puff up his chest and say, fuck you. What are you going to do? Puff up your chest bigger and say, fuck you back, and then you're both punching it out, right? I mean, if this guy's gonna soften, man, the whole world should be sending him love, not hatred.
So true.
Right? And I know
right in the heart, man. Yeah.
You need to vote for the guy, but you know what? Right now we have an opportunity to face this shit with dignity and to face it like a yogi, or to just slip into our reactive mode.
So true. And
And most of the yoga community is the most judgmental, critical community I know.
I
You know, they'll criticize you about your diet. They'll criticize you. You know, it's like, it's just craziness. It's like, you know, we got to start owning the shit.
it's like you said, that gentleness.
Right, man. Who's really practicing? Are you just doing these stupid movements?
Yeah, you're just doing are you doing 100 chaturangas with no mindset about it, just doing them for fun. You gotta get strong.
Yeah, and then when you realize you can't do 100, then you start judging and criticizing yourself.
Yep, because you blew your shoulder out.
It's like, oh fuck, I'm weak. The other guy can do it, and I can't do it. You know, it's the same shit. You're just bringing it into yoga now.
Yeah, man.
True. Yeah,
Wow.
Mother Teresa said something that like she would never support like the fight against something, like say the fight against drugs or the fight against this, because just that fight intention, like she wouldn't support something like that. So it's really like coming back to that gentleness, like sending love to people, love and acceptance. I mean,
You're totally right, man. She said, she basically, I think they wanted her to criticize some, you know, they wanted her to be against something. And her quote was like, I'm against nobody.
Ah, that's awesome.
You know, I'm against nobody, you know? And so, and I get that, you know, it's like, it doesn't work. Listen, that's the way things have been happening from time immemorial, you know? That's where wars come from.
So true.
You know, it's like that, you know, the reason these great beings came to the planet to share this message with us is to get us to look at things from another perspective, you know? I mean, speaking of Gandhi, look at, you know, he fought a war against the most powerful nation in the world at that time, and he won with no violence, right? He didn't throw a punch. He didn't throw a punch.
Not a one.
But he didn't back down. He got right in their face, and then he sat down, and he said, we're not going to move until you leave. And the greatest nation on earth faded away right in front of him. I mean, it's the greatest example of yoga.
Yeah, that's
right,
the yoga.
by the leader, you know. So, you know, the examples are all around us, but you know, I mean, at one point or another, you know, we got to start practicing, man. It's so easy to slip into that old mentality.
Yeah, the old archaic ways. You know, it's love and compassion.
That's why the goal of yoga is enlightenment, because it's only when the light goes on that you can see. And when you start to see how you are, you can stop doing the shit that's hurting you.
Cut that shit out, man. Cut it out.
Right, you're looking at yourself naked in the mirror and you're having judgmental and critical thoughts about your own body, you know, and then all of a sudden you wake up and say, holy shit, I'm judging myself.
Yep.
I couldn't be doing anything more sick in my life than having self-loathing thoughts.
Yeah.
Let me stop. And then what happens is that muscle of judgment becomes weaker because you're no longer feeding it.
Right.
This is called killing the enemy. Right? You start to recognize that the enemy is inside of you. You stop giving the enemy food and the enemy starves and dies.
Exactly.
I mean, how else do you get that shit out of you?
Exactly.
It's like what you put your focus and attention on, that's what you're going to get. And like how you said, you come to yoga, you're going to make yoga shit if you're bringing that intention there, you know?
And when you start, like, and you do Vipassana, or you start becoming aware your thoughts are, you're blown away at where you're actually putting your focus and attention. You realize that, you know, every enemy in your life is actually inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not outside of you. The outside is just a reflection of the inside. It's crazy.
Yeah. And especially with yoga, it's like that the journey is self, at least for me. And like, I remember in that masterclass, you were saying, like, we look at the media, we look at commercials, and they say you're not shit. Like, you need this to feel better. You need this to feel better. And it's like, like really embodying the yoga. It's like, I think you said something like, if you look at a sunset, like that sunset's beautiful as shit, and you're beautiful as shit.
because you're the same as the sunset. That's nature and your nature. Why can you see the beauty of the sunset, but you can't look in the mirror and see the beauty?
You can't see it within yourself when you look in the mirror, man.
And the reason is because of like you just said, that the input that's put in front of you by these corporations that are more interested in making money than wellness.
Yeah, than actually helping you, than actually making you feel better. Yeah.
They don't give a shit about you. All they care about is money, because they, just like us, they've been brainwashed into thinking that if you're rich, you'll be happy. But there's not even any proof that wealthy people are healthier and happier.
No, I think it's that. Yeah, there's no truth to that. No way. Money can't buy you happiness. It buy you some nice things maybe along the way, but it's not going to buy you the happiness. That's an inward journey, man.
There's actually this study that says after you have enough money to lift you out of poverty, money contributes to happiness nothing.
No, I believe it. Yeah.
But it's crazy. And so all these corporations, they're giving you these messages because they even hire psychologists to design the commercials to make you feel so inadequate about yourself that you have an urge to buy their this is capitalism gone fucking
That's
crazy.
Fucking nuts.
Dude, and it's nuts. Like I was researching, just with meditation, when you hit a certain meditation, the flow state, that's when you're in theta and alpha state, where like it's right there in your subconscious. Like watching TV gets you in that theta alpha flow state, so it's getting straight to your subconscious and like affecting your mind.
Downloading the programs.
You're in alpha mentality, and look at the shit. And that doesn't even count the stupid TV shows in between the commercials. Take the most popular TV show in the world right now, like Games of Thrones, right? Right. Look what the fuck you're putting into your head. The violence, the sexism. Women are walking around complaining about being viewed as sex toys. But half the audience of the Game of Thrones is women. They're supporting this shit when every girl on that show is prancing around half naked like a fucking sex toy.
Yep.
And all the men are big, strong, and violent. I mean, this is the shit you're putting in.
Yep.
And then you're wondering why United States of America is the most violent culture on planet Earth.
Yeah, there's no doubt why.
We have all this shit going on. But look at our TV shows. I mean, it's... this is what we're constantly putting in our head. I'm saying turn off the fucking television completely.
Yeah.
90% of the stories on the news are negative. 9% of it is gossip, and there's only 1% of what you really need to know. Turn the fucking news off.
Turn the fucking news off and listen to the Yogi Show.
That's it, man. That's it. Jeez, I'm with you, Brian.
Go to poweryoga.com.
Yeah, just do that. I convinced I haven't watched the news in forever. Ever. And I told my mom the same thing you just said, Brian, about 90% totally negative, 9% gossip, 1% like maybe good. And she finally told me the other day, she stopped watching the news and she's noticing a difference. And it made me so happy that, she finally saw it, someone can tell you something so many times, but when you finally realize something that's like toxic, that's where it was just magical for me. So thank you for reminding me of that, Brian. Appreciate that, man. So
you're welcome.
Absolutely,
it's so
man.
important.
So let's wrap this thing up. Appreciate your time, Mr. Kest. We have a little, we call it the hashtag the lighten up round. It's a few random questions, totally random as shit. And just the answer off the top of your head. No deep thought. You know what I'm saying? You with me on that? Okay, cool. Brian, you ready for this?
Okay, I'm ready. I don't know how fast my mind, with all I'm telling you right now, with all the THC in my system, things work a little slow. So give me a second to answer.
Yeah, we'll give you a second, man. Don't worry. Okay. Who would make a better yoga teacher, Bryan Kest? Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck?
Mickey Mouse. I mean, no, Donald Duck for sure.
All the THC's coming out. Donald Duck.
Donald Duck for sure. It's the voice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Who can do a better handstand, Mateo or Jonah?
Mateo for sure.
Oh, Jonah's pissed. Jonah, we're gonna get Jonah on the show. He's gonna be pissed. Yogi Bryan, you go shoot one.
All right. What's your go-to joke in class? What's your favorite joke? Do you have a certain joke you love?
I never tell a joke. I always just talk about reality, and it's just really fucking funny. Like, if you come to if you want Kundalini shooting up your asshole, like you can be a human lightning bolt, you're in the wrong fucking place.
That's a pretty good one right there, man. That's a pretty good one. Okay, one more. Bryan, if you could take a yoga class from a celebrity as the teacher, who would it be?
If I could take a yoga class from a celebrity, I would have to say Donald Trump.
Oh, all right. Donald Trump. I like that, man. I like that.
Dude, that would be a pretty...
That would be an interesting
cool
class.
Donald Trump.
That'd be an interesting class.
What yoga do you think Donald Trump would teach? Like what style?
Bikram.
All the money. Bikram. I love it, man.
All the money and all the mirrors.
I love it. All the mirrors, all the money. Oh my gosh, man.
What do you think Donald Trump will wear a Speedo?
Wait, is Donald Trump wearing Bikram's silver Speedo?
Trump, he'll for sure wear a Speedo.
The gold one or the silver one? Probably the gold one.
It's gold plated, dude. The whole point of that was if he's teaching yoga, maybe he's practicing, and then there's hope, right?
Yeah, that's right, man.
Maybe we'll get him on the show. You can come on the show. We'll have Donald Trump. We'll have Bryan Kest on. We'll talk to him.
And Jonah, even though he's pissed.
Jonah's good. Let me kiss his ass a little bit here, you guys. He's. Let me tell you something about Jonah. Jonah was 3 years old, and they grew up in Michigan. They came to visit me. Jonah was 3 years old, and I separated him from his father. I took him out into a little, we have a little kind of shopping neighborhood called the 3rd Street Promenade. And I had my shoulders, and I said to him, Jonah, I said, I'll buy you anything you want from any one of these stores. What do you want? And I was, there's toy stores and clothes stores and candy stores. And, I was getting ready for, whatever he wanted. I'm Uncle Bryan. He's coming to visit me. I want the dude to like me. I'm going to buy him anything he wants. And he looks at, I didn't look at me because he was on my shoulders, but he's 3 years old. You know what he says to me? He says, I have everything I need, Uncle Bryan. I don't need anything.
Wow.
Aww.
You find me another 3-year-old that's going to say something like that.
Man, I don't think there's one out there. When my son's 3, I'm going to ask him. He's going to tell me some shit that's not that.
Handstands don't matter. They really don't matter at all. I mean, they're not going to change your life in any way, shape, or form. If anything, it's just going to inflate your ego. But I'll tell you something. When it comes to physical stuff, I don't think anybody's going to be able to hold a candle to Mateo.
I'm going to have to check his YouTube. We're going to link his YouTube channel in the show notes on the website. We're going to link it so we can check it out.
Jonah, unfortunately, got the Kest body.
Okay.
Mateo got my ex-wife's body, and it's a little bit more athletic.
Gotcha. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time, brother, to connect with us and be here on the Yogi Show. This has been a really great time. I know there's a lot of value for the listeners out there, and we appreciate you so much, man. It's been a great time.
Thank you, guys. I had a lot of fun hanging with you, and I sincerely wish you two the best. I wish this podcast the best, and I look forward to another time.
All right, man.
Thank you so much. Yeah, let's get you on another time, and we're going to come see you at one of these master classes in the future. Pedro definitely needs to come to your class.
Definitely. Just skip the Thanksgiving and come to Boca Raton again, and I'll be there, bro.
All right, bro. Thank you, guys.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Adios.
Namaste.
Thank you so much for listening to the Yogi Show podcast. Tell your friends, tell everybody about the podcast. We would appreciate that so much. We would appreciate that so much. Share the podcast to anybody that you think would benefit from it. Please visit theyogishow.com for all the show notes. Thank you, Bryan Kest, for being on the show today. poweryoga.com. Visit him on a masterclass. It's amazing. And special thanks to DJ Taz Rashid for providing the music today on The Yogi Show. Remember, gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Namaste.